meanwhile, I want to bring in the leader of the Conservative Party, Andrew Scheer, because as it stands, MPs could be back in Ottawa on Monday. There are negotiations going on right now between opposition parties as well as the government to try and reach an agreement about what that may look like in the absence of everyone descending back here on Ottawa. Hi, Mr. Scheer. Good to see you.
Good evening. Thanks for having me back on.
No, good to have you. I wanted to start off and start at Parliament. Where do these negotiations stand?
Well, we remain hopeful that the other parties will agree that accountability sessions, oversight, scrutiny of government programs, and challenging ministers for decisions will lead to better results for Canadians. So we've put forward a responsible work plan, which would see less than 50 MPs, I think it's somewhere around 40 MPs in Ottawa, representing each party in proportion to the results of the last election. We're willing to negotiate to make sure that there aren't surprise votes on issues that would be more appropriate for the full House to be there. We're very flexible as to how we can get there, but we do believe that we need regular meetings of the House of Commons to bring in the Prime Minister, bring in ministers, hold them to account for decisions they've made, and make sure they get programs right the first time going forward.
My understanding is the proposal that was put forth was to meet once a week for a many hours type of sitting, an accountability session, much like Committee of the Whole. Is that satisfactory to you?
We proposed to have 4. The government didn't want to have any. Now they've proposed just once a week. I'll just point out that Mr. Trudeau is providing daily briefings. He's providing daily press conferences. His ministers are doing the same thing. We don't believe that there's any reason why we can't have some of those in the House of Commons. So we would like to see more than one. We're hoping that we can get some buy-in from the other parties. Things evolve very quickly. An announcement we've seen with this government, they make an announcement on Monday, and by Thursday they're already having to amend it. So by having those sessions more than once a week, we can help fine-tune these programs, provide that input on the front end, and get better products quicker, so that Canadians don't have to go through the anxiety as they have and see the programs change several times before the benefits actually get out the door.
Does it have to be 4 times a week? I'm asking you, I read an article in the HuffPost where Elizabeth May, the leader of the Green Party, for example, said physical distancing isn't possible right now in the West Block, in the House of Commons. The hallways are too narrow, the lobbies are too crowded. We know that it requires calling in staff. I'm not arguing here for any less accountability, believe me. As a journalist, that's the last thing I would do. But is it realistic? Is it feasible to expect all of this to happen 4 times a week? Is once or twice satisfactory?
Yeah. Well, I found Miss May's comments ridiculous. If she finds if she didn't enjoy, her spot in the lounge, I'm happy to offer the use of some of the office space we have on the 4th floor. Look, the chamber was designed for 338 people. You don't have to hang out in the lounge in between going to the session. There's lots of other places around Parliament Hill you can go to, including MP's offices. The chamber is built for 338 people. We're talking about less than 40, around 40 MPs to be in the chamber. We're talking about reduced security because there won't be MPs in all the different buildings. We're talking about no cafeteria services. We're talking about reduced rosters for printing, and because there's fewer activities going on, and because we're sitting for fewer hours, it means less translation staff, less IT, fewer IT professionals. So we believe that by having that kind of reduced workload, we can manage the health and safety component on the Hill. And look, 4 is ideal. 0 is unacceptable. We're not satisfied with the 1 that the government has offered.
Is 2 okay?
I don't know why Mr. Trudeau is not more why he's not more supportive of having these accountability sessions. He says one thing. He says democracy is important, accountability is important, but that his actions don't back that up. So we're hoping that they'll agree on 3, perhaps even 2, but 1 is really not sufficient.
So you are willing to accept 2?
Yeah, look, I mean, these are negotiations, right? And we do need support of the other parties. I'm also challenging the other opposition parties to replicate the good work that they've been able to do. I will acknowledge that the contributions of NDP MPs have helped to make some of these programs better. We should be finding ways to get more of that, not excuses to get less of it.
With respect, though, I'm not sure Ms. May is necessarily ridiculous or trying to find an excuse. There are legitimate public health concerns right now. I feel nervous leaving my house to go to work. There are many people who are staying inside in order to mitigate the risk that basically all of us take every time we step out of our home's doors, right? Is she really ridiculous for voicing those concerns?
What I found ridiculous was her comments about the lounges, the lobbies on the Hill. You know, there are rooms on either side of the chamber that normally are packed with MPs as they go in and out of the House. There are multiple ways to get into the chamber. There are multiple spaces available on Parliament Hill in West Block. There are rooms available. If she has trouble finding space in between going in and out of the chamber, I'm happy to offer her some of my office space up on the 4th floor. I don't think that that these are all obstacles that can't be overcome. Yes, there are challenges. I'm very pleased to see that the House of Commons have put hand sanitizing stations in more locations. We're all taking these things very seriously. I believe we can do it. Yes, they are challenges, but they are not obstacles that cannot be overcome.
Okay, I want to switch gears and ask you about China, because you have been particularly vocal lately in your criticism of the government and their response to the questions about the accuracy of data and information coming out of China. What specifically do you want the government to do about this? Do you want them to launch an investigation? Do you want them, as Erwin Kotler has recommended, to levy sanctions against individuals in China who are responsible for this behavior? What do you want them to do?
Well, we certainly do support elevating Canada's response. I shouldn't even say elevating. The government of Canada has literally done nothing to stand up for itself. When we go back and look at the fact that 2 Canadians have been held illegally in China for so long now, blocks on Canadian exports, the government needs to stand up for Canadians and stand up for our self-interest. We know that the government of China is a corrupt, autocratic, human rights abusing regime. That in and of itself should mean that we should be dealing with China with a great deal of skepticism, and we should be going in with both eyes wide open. Now, with the evidence that is coming out about how the government of China has hidden the true nature of this virus in the early days, that has literally cost lives and livelihoods around the world. China needs to be held accountable, and this government needs to start standing to it.
What does holding China accountable look like? Again, with respect, Mr. Scheer, you didn't answer the specific question, which is what actions do you want the government to take? I take your point on highlighting the sort of deficiencies in their response and responding to the news that's coming out right now. But should they sanction people? Should they launch an investigation? What should they do?
Well, even before this virus, I was calling for the government to do several things. First and foremost, to show China that we are not going to accept the way that they're treating Canadian citizens. We should pull Canada's investment from the Asian Infrastructure Bank. That is an institution that helps promote China's foreign policy. Secondly, I believe that we should increase the amount of inspections that we subject Chinese goods coming into Canada. That will help us find more fentanyl coming into our communities, more counterfeit goods, things like that. I do believe we should start laying the foundation and start investigating as to whether or not sanctions would be an appropriate tool as well. But this cannot be just a business as usual relationship. Things are not fine here. We've got a government of China hiding data, not being honest and truthful with the World Health Organization. We've got 2 Canadians held illegally, and we've got Canadian producers unable to send their products to China. They are not treating us with the respect that we deserve. They're not being open and honest. They are not being a faithful partner.
We're also in the middle of a pandemic in which crucial supplies for frontline healthcare workers depend on a supply chain that is largely based in China. I take your point, again, on the deficiencies in their response and the genuine criticism of how China has handled this. But at the same time, I'm sure you read, like I did this morning, that they blocked millions of dollars of PPE for the United States from coming out of that country. Is it not incumbent upon the government to consider the ramifications of the kind of approach that you detail and adjust their response as a result?
Well, we're very concerned when we see reports that the goods that we have secured from China are coming into Canada, and we find that they're contaminated or that they're not meeting the specifications. They're not appropriate to be used. So, look, I think this whole crisis has shown us the vulnerability that we have as a country when we're that dependent on China for manufacturing. I think going forward, when we're through this crisis, we need to start challenging the government as to how we can incorporate the supply chain for critical equipment, for healthcare equipment, and designate it as part of a national, and view it as part of a national security lens, because clearly we are extremely vulnerable right now because of our dependence on manufacturing in China.
Okay, I have to leave it there. Thanks, Mr. Scheer. Hi, am Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.